Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's executive. And just to make people aware that we've now started to record. Any apologies?
No, convener, there are no apologies. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. We move to the minute of the meeting held on the 13th of October. It's there as a true record. Are we happy to agree with it? Okay, is there any items within that that won't be covered or anything that requires anybody wishes to raise at this time? No. Oh, thanks for that. Sorry. Okay, James.
Yeah, thank you, convener. It's on page 11, convener, the E7 regarding the new private hire and car drivers. I'm not sure if we got all the right information to make this. As you'll know, a lot of these, like myself, would have had emails and letters from people in trade where it was considered, we were told that we had meetings with the taxi trade, when in fact it was two biggest companies. I know we can't change the vision standard orders, but I think it would have been a different, maybe have been a different outcome if we knew all the facts.
Thank you. I'll get councillor, sorry, apologies. I don't think you would want to be called councillor. I'll get Mr Moody to come in at that, because you're right, there have been a number of discussions over the last few weeks in relation to this, because I have been concerned. But I'll ask Mr Moody to come in and provide an update and explanation.
Thank you, convener. And first of all, my apologies for not appearing on the screen. I'm just having some IT difficulties this morning. Yes, Councillor Mayor is correct, convener, that there have been some members of the trade who have been in contact with the council following the decision at the last meeting. I think what I would say about that is, first of all, that there will be an opportunity next week at a meeting of the Taxi Forum, which is a representative group of operators within the trade, to have a full discussion in relation to the decision, and an opportunity to hear the points of view directly from all parts of the trade. And I think it's fair to say that it's been smaller and medium-sized operators who have been unhappy with the decision taken by the council at the last executive meeting. But I think, convener, I would like the opportunity to allow that taxi forum to proceed, where the portfolio holder will be present to hear the views put forward by the trade, and I'll be present as well to discuss the decision that was made. And I think we'll be in a better position to give a fuller response to the issues that have been raised after that meeting has taken place.
Thank you, Colin, for that. It may be helpful to allow some feedback to elected members without that taxi forum. So would there be able to be a briefing circulated following that, and any subsequent actions that may come from that, depending on the outcomes of the discussions, and the process for taking that forward?
Yes, convener, I think that would be the right thing to do. It's obviously an issue which has raised concern. I know that a number of members have received contact, so it's entirely right that they should hear what the fruits of the discussion are. And the constitution of the Taxi Forum does allow for opposition as shadow portfolio holders to attend as well, so there will be an opportunity to do that too.
Councillor Kerr, are you content with that as a way forward?
Yes, yeah, just a supplementary, probably for Mr. Moody. Are the two big taxi firms represented at this forum?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Moody.
Okay, thank you. Nigel?
Thanks, Convener. I appreciate what you said about a members' briefing after the Taxi Forum. My view would be that given that it was this executive decision with the information given, I would like to see a report come back to the executive so that we can discuss it. So if that could be done, please.
That would, if there's any changes required as a result of the discussions at the Taxi Forum to what was agreed, then yes, that would happen. But the aim was to actually have something in between the executives so that members could have an update immediately following that and be aware of what the next stage was if there was to be a report to the executive.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other matters relating to the minute, we can move on to agenda item 4, which is the rolling action log. Councillor Kerr?
You're on mute there. Then on page 15, the motion, that was my motion, convener, regarding fireworks, and the comments as a result of fireworks review group will be published in the summer 2020 and a follow-up report done. As the report's done, I received it 2 weeks ago, the Scottish Government. So at some point, can we get a discussion at a future executive convener?
Councillor Kerr, as a result of receiving the report, there will be a duty to report back to the executive following that. Douglas, do you want to give any further information at this stage?
Just to confirm that that's the case, convener, that we are having regard to the report that we've now received, and we will be bringing a report forward to the executive.
Councillor Nimmo?
Thanks, convener. In relation to page 14, and it's under the report title, the Forest Estate Plan, I wonder if Douglas could give us an update in relation to where we are with the work in Polmont. I know it's in progress, but I'd appreciate an update.
Douglas,
So,
I don't know if you're necessarily able to give the details just now, but
I'm happy to get an update supplied to Councillor Nimmo. We are working with the Green Action Trust, formerly the Central Scotland Green Network Trust, on the delivery of the first phase, which involved drawing together funding from different sources to implement the plan for that first set of activities, which was in the Falkirk, Carn Shore, etc. areas. We're now looking to draw together funds to support delivery in the Polmont area. These discussions are taking place at the present time, and we hope to have something up and running in 21-22. So we will be reporting back on that once we've identified something.
Thanks, Douglas.
okay. If there's no other questions in relation to the rolling action law, we have to accept.
Great.
Yeah. Agenda item 5 is the Economic Recovery Plan 2021 and Action Plan Update Report. It's a very detailed report, and I hope Douglas will be able to help us navigate through that. Douglas?
Happy to do that, convener. This report follows up the report that was agreed in 17 September at the Emergency Executive, and was a consequence of the work that had taken place over the summer to consult on our economic recovery plan and to set out a number of measures that we should implement to aid the recovery from the effects of the COVID-19 virus. So the report at that time had identified that there was need for resources to help to implement the plan. And at the council meeting on 30th September, there was an agreement to allocate some additional revenue funding of £300,000 towards delivery of the plan. We had also agreed to make an approach to Business Loans Scotland, who were administering a loan fund for the area and held 232,000 of funds in reserve there. We approached them to recover those funds from that source and use them for more direct grant support. And additionally, early in September, the Scottish Government allocated 18 million to local authorities for town centre capital works, and we were allocated 711,000 from that source. So in sum, we have £300,000 of capital funds, of revenue funds, the 230,000 of funds for grants and loans for business, and 711,000 of capital for works in town centres. And this report suggests the means to allocate those funds in support of the economic recovery. Section 4 of the report sets out the suggested measures that these funds should be directed towards. First up, in terms of the revenue allocation of 300,000, we suggest that we should be offering support to complete the work on the business case for the investment zone and reach heads of terms for that work at a cost of £50,000. Employability is clearly a critical concern just now, given the increase in unemployment, and therefore we're looking to recruit an additional 2 employment and training coordinators with part-year costs for this year for those coordinators at 34,000. We also want to deliver additional support for our employer recruitment incentive and job creation programmes, and they will blend with the work that's taking place using national funding to deliver the Kickstart programme and the Youth Guarantee Scheme. So we're suggesting augmenting those initiatives with 75k of funding. Supporting town centres was a priority that came through the consultation process, and a range of measures identified there to assist not just Falkirk Town Centre but also the district centres in each of Bowness, Grangemouth, Stennismuir and Denny, and bolstering the work of Falkirk Delivers to offer their types of services out into each of the district centres, as well as benefiting Falkirk itself. And to do that, we're suggesting that we should appoint 2 additional assistant town centre managers and a handyman, have a maintenance fund for town centres, and offer digital business support grants to enable people to trade online. We're also suggesting tapping into support through the Chamber of Commerce to help with engagement and networking of business and help to promote peer-to-peer support. Redundancy support is an important topic given the range of redundancies that have been announced in the area recently, and the Scottish Government PACE partnership is proven to be quite active now. We're suggesting that we get some additional support offered to that work at £25,000. A Check and Protect app to support the hospitality, leisure and town centre sectors, with Forth Valley Chamber of Commerce at a cost of 4k. Some localised marketing work to promote the tourism sector at a cost of £7,000. Parking in town centres is an important consideration that came through the consultation, and we're suggesting a new short-term parking tariff be introduced at a cost of 50p for the first 30 minutes, as well as tying in with the operation of the Ringo mobile platform that would allow ease of use of our parking areas. And so we're suggesting that that be promoted through the scheme. In terms of the 232,000 of Business Loan Scotland funds, we were able to draw them out from that source and secure an additional 140,000 of European funds, ERDF income, to bolster that fund, and therefore we have a total business support fund of 350k, and we're suggesting that that be delivered through operation of a restart loan that we would deliver in partnership with DSL Business Finance, and that we make 115,000 available for small loans for businesses who need assistance with cash flow. There's also a business resilience grant and an adaptation grant suggested that will help companies who are struggling to sustain themselves or who need to make adaptations to their premises, etc., to continue to trade, and a range of grant support offered there. Digital activities clearly proven to be very popular and vital to many businesses at the present time. Our Digital Boost programme has been very helpful in that regard, and some additional funds we've received for delivery of that. We're suggesting a digital grant be available at £10,000. We will help supplement that with 66k that will operate across the Forth Valley to promote and operate that grant scheme, and a specialist consultant to give additional advice and support to companies in how they operate their digital services. I mentioned the PACE fund earlier. We're suggesting 25k of support for business there, but also, we'll direct 25k to support businesses in this, and there's then another 65k towards supporting individuals, 90k to support individuals for the operation of that scheme. In relation to town centre capital, we're suggesting that this would augment the work that's already underway using 1.9 million of capital that was allocated by Scottish Government last year, and we would put those funds towards the additional works noted here in Bowness. That would relate to additional costs at the Bowness Library for conversion of that facility, and also acquisition of vacant properties in the town as available. And we're also expanding the e-bike network through this measure in locations in Bowness and in Denny. Also some gable projection features at Church Walk. It's tying off some of the work on public art that was promoted in Denny at the time of the regeneration scheme there. In Grangemouth, we're doing quite a major scheme for demolition at Kerse Road, and we're suggesting using some additional funds to assist with delivery of that project, as well as looking at acquisition of some vacant town centre premises. We're also suggesting that we proceed with town centre regeneration master plans for Falkirk and Grangemouth that will lead to further investment in each of these locations, and that will tie in with the work that's taking place on the investment zone, and we suggest that 90k be put towards delivery of that work. These are measures that have come through consultation, as I've mentioned, with businesses and communities that took place over the summer, and therefore we're fairly clear that these reflect the requirements that are in place at the present time. We do highlight in the implications section that the measures for support are for 2021 in regard to the funds of the 300k allocated by the council, but should additional funding be agreed at the council's budget meeting in February, that would allow us to carry forward these measures into the next financial year, and that will affect our capacity for the recruitment of the ETU coordinators that will let their contracts be extended. So quite a range of activity that we want to put underway. Obviously, this is in addition to the work we're already doing in supporting delivery of business grant schemes and so on that come through Scottish Government, but we feel that this is quite well targeted towards business needs at the present time. Happy to take any questions, Convener.
Douglas, it's a fair suite of activities by way of investment in our town centre and as part of our recovery plan. But I'll go to Councillor Alexander.
Thanks very much. First of all, can I thank Douglas and his staff for a very comprehensive report. It's very detailed, but it had to be detailed. We're facing obviously a major crisis that we've never faced before, and with the impact of the virus, there seems to be a light at the end of the tunnel coming towards us. Hopefully it's not a train, but it comes in the form of an antidote for the virus, or at least a vaccination for the virus, or against the virus. We won't know the full picture until things start to turn to normal. We see just exactly where we've lost, where we've gained, and we go from there. But we can't afford to wait until that day before we make a start on the recovery programme. That's why this report is so important. It has a very, very, I think, themed stance to it, very much in line with for example, the report was recently approved by the Chief Executive, Target Child Poverty.
Oh, apologies. Right, oh sorry, we'd lost you there for a minute, David.
So we'll go for a tea break. Well, where was it? Child poverty, yeah. So linking that to mainstream employment, we see probably the best outcomes for young people in deprived backgrounds. With that, I'll formally move the recommendations that are contained within the report, commend them to members. I think they're all, if not all of the proposals therein, I think are worthy of our support. And as I said, hope that it gets unanimously, because it's important that we work together on this particular battlefield that we're on at the moment, and when we come through with minimal damage as possible to the local economy and to people's standard of living. With recommendations contained in the report. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. I'm happy to second this report. The suite of interventions has been very much consulted on with the communities involved, and that means the business communities. We've looked to spread as far and wide the support across the sectors, and employability, as has been said, is a real issue going forward, and we have a real demand for support, but we don't have the capacity, and as a result of this funding, it enables it to extend that capacity and to maximise the opportunities of the national schemes as much as possible, to improve the quality of life of those who have been significantly impacted as a result of the economic crisis that we've been in. I think also that there's a number of areas of business support that have fallen through the net, and hopefully the various pieces of business support that we can provide through this funding will be able to help those that maybe haven't been able to access other funding, and help sustain them, and allow new businesses to actually come into being as people look to diversify across the board. And of course, there is the larger scheme of the growth deal. We need to be able to move forward with that at pace in order to support the recovery plans going forward. But on top of all the investment that's come direct from government, to be able to put in another 1.3 million into our local area is something that's significant, and it's something that I think we should be welcomed going forward. And I'm happy to see the work that has been done over the summer come to this point and actually now hopefully start to make a difference. So I'll open it up to members. I think Councillor Munro, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, convener. As you both said, there is a lot of information in this document and a lot of initiatives both from national government and locally. I noticed that within the suite of projects being put forward, that there is quite a number of jobs. So we have a technical advisor, we have employment support, employment recruitment, 3 new people for town centre management, and a consultant to do a plan for Falkirk Town Centre and Grangemouth. I wondered, are some of these appointments just for 1 year, or are some of them permanent, because there seem to be 6 or 7 of them? And what is it that people are going to see on the ground in terms of the improvements in the town centre? Are there projects to deal with the large number of empty shops and the issues around antisocial behaviour in the town centre? Thank you.
Douglas, do you want to pick up these points?
Yeah, happy to pick that up, convener. So in relation to the jobs, the positions that are suggested through this are temporary, and we make the point that they will be appointed to those roles on the understanding that there may be continuation of the positions if additional funding comes forward at the budget meeting in February. So we're not making any permanent appointments through this. It's 2 appointments within the council for employment and training coordinators, and they will have a caseload alongside the other employment and training coordinators. Usually our coordinators have a caseload of 40-50 different trainees that they support. So it would be of that form that would apply the funds. There's also the assistant managers and handyman positions with Falkirk Delivers, and they'll be temporary positions as well, subject to the availability of this funding. The technical support, etc., that we're talking about for the investment zone will build on the external technical advice and consultancy support we've had for that work. It's additional time of those who've been assisting us with this process. When it comes to Grangemouth and Falkirk Town Centre master plans, they will be specific commissions rather than employment of individuals. In relation to what people will see as tangible works, this obviously ties in with the 1.9 million of funds that was allocated previously by the executive, and we gave a report on that at the executive last year that set out the allocation of those funds. We identified Falkirk, Grangemouth and Bowness as the focus for that investment based on the town centre vacancy rates at the time. And in Falkirk, it will focus on there's a number of works we're doing with Falkirk Delivers, but it includes public realm works in the High Street and down towards Newmarket Street. And so there is a scheme being worked up for that. In Grangemouth, it's the demolition of the Kerse Road properties, and so there will very definitely be tangible evidence of the change arising from that, and some of that's already been taking place with the relocation of the businesses into other units in Grangemouth to allow that to happen. And in Bowness, we're proceeding with the work to upgrade the library, improve access to that facility, and also we're looking at, and it would be subject to the availability of properties, that we might look to obtain vacant properties and then promote these for redevelopment, refurbishment, but that will be down to the market availability of these properties. So there will be tangible differences seen as a consequence of these works.
Thank you, Douglas. Okay, Nigel.
Thanks, Convener. Just coming back to the additional jobs, just to get clarification. For example, the 3 new staff for the town centre, the 2 town centre managers and the handyman at 35k. What time frame does that cover? Is that a full year cost, or is that between the time that they're employed and the end of the financial year? Same is true of the consultancy at 95k. What time frame does that figure actually? You're on mute, Douglas.
First time today. The 35k is for the remainder of this financial year. And I mean, there may be bits and bobs of going beyond that. It's down to the terms that Falkirk Delivers will strike to recruit those staff. That will be for them. We will just arrange to pay them on the understanding that that's what they supply. And as I said, if there are additional funds agreed by the council next year, then we will have a separate agreement for delivery of these services with Falkirk Delivers, and it's up to them how they whether they wish to continue those contracts. But it's important to recognise these positions are to assist with the delivery of the work that they do to promote the town centre. So Elaine Grant, who many people will be familiar with, and Falkirk Delivers, has been highly active over recent months in supporting Falkirk Town Centre and working very closely with business to protect their interests. And this is to give additional support to Elaine in carrying out that work, and also to offer that type of support in the district centres. And that was certainly something that came out through the consultation, that people are looking to get that kind of assistance. And it's very much hands-on assistance to give them guidance as to how they can keep their business going. So that would be the way that that's funded. In relation to the consultancy support for the investment zone, we want to get heads of terms agreed. Ideally for us is the end of this year, but it's probably going to be into the early part of next year. And therefore we need this piece of work done pretty well right away. We're working on it at the present time, but we need some additional technical input to it to prove some of the detail of the proposal, the schemes that we're working up, and their economic impact. That's something that will be very, probed quite deeply by UK and Scottish Government as to the expectations of what will be delivered through these projects. So it's that type of support that we're looking to engage. The work on Grangemouth and Falkirk, we'd expect to get that commissioned in the early part of next calendar year, in order that we can prepare investment plans for delivery in future years. And hopefully these would be giving us the designs of works that we could be implementing using the funds that will come through the 90 million that is allocated in the investment zone.
Okay, thanks. Just in terms of time frame, I mean, we're pretty close to Christmas, and after Christmas it's 3 months to the end of the financial year. So recruiting these extra staff, I mean, realistically, when are they going to start? how much of the 3 months after Christmas are we going to get? In other words, what bang are we getting for our bucks for the 35k there and the ones for the employment training unit? And you talk about subject to there being budgetary approval for next year. Given the gap that we're going to be facing, that is going to have to be funded from somewhere else. So I have a bit of misgiving about, you know, value for money in terms of what we've got here for these extra employees, given the short space of time that they're actually going to be with us.
We'll move as quickly as we can to get people in place. So, and the employment and training coordinators, as I say, they'll have a caseload of 40, 50 people that they'll have to connect with and get them pointed towards training or employment as quickly as possible. So we'd hope to have them in early part of next calendar year to allow that to be worked on. And ETU have a caseload of about 1,000 people just now that they're working with. So the demand is there and people do need that support. When it comes to the town centres, again, we are, you know, understanding that there is a clear demand for that type of service. And I know that Falkirk Delivers will want to move very quickly to get someone appointed and in place for the start of the new calendar year. So, I mean, understandably, you know, it's taken us time to, once we got the plan up and running, get the agreement on the range of measures, get agreement through the council on 30th September to get the additional funds identified. But behind the scenes, our team are working as quickly as they can to have this up and running as quickly and to most effect as possible.
Thanks, Gavina. Can we expect a report back on the effectiveness of these measures at some point?
There will be a report back on the spend in due course, and obviously the impacts of that. I think we need to keep approved just at the end of September our new corporate plan, our corporate priorities, and economic development and jobs and health and well-being. What were priorities within that, and all of this investment is related to that. And similarly, that we'll need to give that consideration when we're doing our budget deliberations and going forward about where we actually look to invest and where we choose to disinvest as a result of the pressures. But that's not what's on the table for discussion today. I think we have a fairly robust plan here to help based on evidence that's been given from particularly those in the businesses in the town centre and from the employment stats. So I think while I appreciate people have concerns of the timescale, there is a demand out there for the council to be doing something and taking the lead. Councillor Reid.
Yes, I mean, it was something I mentioned at the pre-meeting, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning it in public, and that's the work being done by this particular unit led by Pete Reid. I had occasion to get an email from one of the local businesses. It was about Monty Python, what's the council ever done for us, and got a reply from Karen Smith in that unit. One of the best replies I've ever had from an officer, by the way, and I've had a few, I may say. But it was very lengthy, but every line was meaningful. It wasn't lengthy and boring. And a lot of the work that's being done is unseen work, not even mentioned in this report. So I wondered if my thanks in particular could be passed on to that unit for the work that they've been doing and are doing. That's it. Thank
you, Pat, for that. I think I would concur with those comments, and I know there's a huge amount of work that's going on in the background and under very difficult circumstances, and these advisors haven't necessarily got the easiest of time because they're having to provide support to people who are feeling things very, very pressured financially, and it's their livelihoods. And they are doing a fantastic job, and We were one of the first councils to be able to adapt very quickly to the business grants, and we've done exactly the same again with the next round. So yes, Douglas is a good team down there. Joan?
Thanks, convener. Just a quick point. I understand and I agree with a lot of what Nigel is saying. However, and I want to emphasise this because we keep talking about Falkirk Town Centre. A lot of this work was done by Councillor Black when she was in economic development, with obviously Pat's support. But I think that we need to make it obvious to people that these extra staff, specifically the assistant managers, is for the district centres. Now, I know Douglas touched on that, but then when we revert back to talking about Falkirk Town Centre again, this is an important point to make, that the extra staff should be concentrating on the other town centres within our district. Thanks.
And that is, you're absolutely right. The additional staff was as a response to be able to support the additional the district centres, and a lot of the work that's going to go on with the business grants, etc., will also not be focused entirely on Falkirk Town Centre. It will be council wide. So that, just for clarity, this whole programme isn't focused purely on Falkirk Town Centre. It is council wide, and we'll look to support as many of our district centres and our smaller centres if required, where they can, where there's a capacity. Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, convener. One or two questions for Douglas. See, we've got to spend over £1 million on some of these. Was there a consultation done with elected members, or is this officer's recommendation? I just want to know if any councillors were involved in these recommendations.
Douglas?
Yeah, the draft of the report. So we brought a draft of the economic recovery plan to the, I think it was the June meeting of the emergency executive, on the basis that members were content with it, to allow us to consult more widely. So that was prepared at that time. And then we had a series of focus groups involving business interests over the summer, as well as a full community consultation that took place over the summer that tied in with the work that was taking place on the council business plan. And that came back to allow us to finalise the plan in September. And so there's a detailed action plan that was agreed at that point, with the full range of measures that we are implementing. These proposals here came through the consultation and are the detail for how we suggest that the monies be applied to deliver these measures. So there has been a series of rounds where this has come through the executive to allow these decisions to be reached.
Okay. Next question is over the moon regarding the restart loans, resilience grants and adaptation grants. It shows that we're there to help local businesses. But what needs to be done, it needs to be communicated well. The last time we helped a lot of businesses, but there was a lot of businesses didn't know it was available. So in the time they knew about it, there was a cut-off point and they lost out. So how are we going to communicate that we've got these in place, Douglas?
Yeah, we have quite extensive arrangements for communication through the likes of the Business Gateway. So we tie in with the national networks and Business Gateway. There's a website, there's a series of communications messages come out through a range of formats through that source. And additionally, we do our own communication using online principally. So we have Facebook and Twitter feeds that are used regularly, and I would encourage all members, by all means, sign up to the Business Falkirk Twitter and Facebook accounts, the Invest Falkirk and the Visit Falkirk strands, all give good messages about the range of support that is available. And on the basis of the agreement that hopefully is reached this morning, we'll be promoting these schemes and getting that activated as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Douglas. On the, I don't know if you've already mentioned it, but see the acquisition of long-standing vacant premises in town centres, these commercial premises.
Yeah, so
only go, Douglas.
yeah, I mean, there's a range of premises in Grangemouth and Bowness been vacant for considerable periods of time. So we're looking at the possibility that we might acquire. That will depend on the terms that we'd be able to strike. We wouldn't be purchasing, without making sure that we were getting the best price, and that it fits with the overall intentions that the council would have for each of the town centres. So we'll do that selectively and determine that we're getting the best value possible for the council through that approach.
Thanks. And last question, have you got the staff to deliver these projects, Douglas?
Yes. They're
That's
doing
fine.
their best.
That's fine. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Thanks, Douglas. Thanks, convener.
A very succinct answer there. It's not something you get very often. Okay, Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, convener. It's a fairly comprehensive mix of support measures for the town centres, and I think given we're in dire times, and I think it's been kind of well thought out, and there's a good balance across the piece. So the sooner we get moving on it, the better, and it gives some hope to the Falkirk district. And I was glad to see that it's spread out across Falkirk district, not just for Falkirk town centre. I'm sure that'll be welcome by everybody. So, not happy enough with it, and let's get cracking on it, but measure the efficacy of it later on with a report back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alexander, do you want to make any final comments?
Thanks very much. Yeah, just one or two comments. First of all, to Nigel. Nigel, if you want to go down and see the training unit in action, then I'm quite happy to take you down there. It's an absolutely fantastic unit, and if there's a better one anywhere in Scotland, then I'd be surprised. If you want to go down and have a look, I'm happy to take you down. Once obviously things are a wee bit clearer. The town centres. Mr. Bissett has got to say, but we've got to remember that for around 10 years, it was only the district centres that could effectively put forward proposals for regeneration. Town centre was excluded from that particular process. So there's an element of catching up to be done, and we've got to recognise that while there are similarities in Denny, Bonnybridge, Harbour and Grangemouth, Falkirk is very different. It's a different type of economy there is in Falkirk. But I'm pleased that we seem to have a unanimity within the proposals, because I do want to congratulate and thank the Douglas and his team for it. Something that I think we can all sit back and look with for a short period of time, very short period of time, and look at the progress that's been made and then move forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Alexander. On that, are we happy to agree the report?
Agree.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, everybody move on to item 6 as a corporate plan and business plan performance indicators. And is it Sir Richie, are you going to take this, or is it Kenneth?
No, I'm going to take it, convener. In September
Council agreed our new corporate plan and our new business plan, and these were built on 3 priorities: communities, enterprise and innovation. In both reports in September, we said we were working on performance information, which would be used to help monitor the progress towards achieving our priorities. Members will continue to receive the financial reports that they are used to, and these are the reports on the revenue position, capital programme and treasury management. Reports will be produced on our new transformation projects, as well as our business as usual projects, seeking member approval to deliver on our priorities. Scrutiny Committee will continue to receive performance reports on each of our priorities in turn, and last week the Scrutiny Committee received a report on communities. So in monitoring our new priorities and the delivery of our objectives within these priorities, not just about the performance indicators, but they have a place in that monitoring framework. Appendix 1 in the report sets out the performance indicators we propose to use to help measure each of these priorities. These performance indicators are largely drawn from the suite used by the local government benchmarking framework. There are 2 areas that we want to develop. We want to develop some more performance indicators for the innovation strand of our priorities. And the second area that we want to develop is some local customer satisfaction indicators. At the moment, the customer satisfaction indicators used by the local government benchmarking framework are taken from the household survey. That's only carried out every 2 years and uses a small sample size. So we really want to develop something more local, which we think is more reflective of where we are in terms of customer satisfaction. These things will get built into the quarterly updates that we'll provide to members, and we said that we would do that as part of the 2 reports that went to Council in September. The recommendations are set out in section 2 of the report. I'm happy to answer questions that members have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Ritchie. Having agreed our new corporate priorities, as has been said, we need to actually be able to measure them and see what difference that they will make, and particularly where we're going to look to have to invest. We need to be able to demonstrate that investment has been made wisely. And as a result, we've had to reset our performance indicators to align with our new priorities, and this will then give us our baseline for going forward. Most of the indicators are already information that we collect as part of the national benchmarking framework. That also enables us to be able to measure against our peer local authorities and how we are performing as well, and be able to make that comparison and allow members to actually be able to see what progress has been made. So I don't think I'm going to say much more than that, because as I say, we're at that reset stage, and we need to develop further. And I have no doubt that as scrutiny happens, there will be more information that members will want to see on the back of this going forward, and that's absolutely fine, in order to demonstrate our progress. So I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, convener. I'm sorry, I'm not quite feeling my best at the moment, but we'll get through this today. I welcome the priorities of the corporate plan and the additional measures of the financial plan and workforce plans, which will move into the business plan section. We, of course, will continue to get other progress reports, as has already been said, to both executive and, importantly, scrutiny. and I think they're quite well laid out in paragraph 4.1. Please, one of the things to note on this, it was a question I had asked at pre was on where the comparators are. This will form our baseline for future comparators as we move along, and I look forward to those coming through. Yes, it covers communities, enterprise and innovation, and it's good to see some interesting things in there which I hope to see develop as things move. I further welcome that these indicators will continue to be developed and enhanced in monitoring against our priorities. I think it's very important, and I think Stuart touched on it, about the customer satisfaction indicators and actually trying to do that a little bit different, because I think it's very important that we're actually listening to the people of Falkirk by looking at them and making that an integral part of what we're doing here. I formally second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bowes. Open up for any questions or comments. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, convener. As has been said, it's very have some clear idea of the performance indicators which we're going to measure our performance against, and there is a whole suite of these. However, I'm not sure exactly what the starting point is intended to be, and exactly where they will be reported. Are we talking of reporting just through scrutiny, or will it be to the exec committee? Perhaps somebody could clarify that.
Okay, Stuart, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, thank you, convener. So I think 2 points there raised by Councillor Munro. The information coming from the local government benchmarking framework is reported a year in arrears. So the latest information we have is 18-19. So I think what our plan is to wait until the information is published in January, which will be 19-20. And we can then start to look at that as our benchmark. I think what we need to be careful of, though, is what's the effect of COVID been on a number of these indicators. So we'll not be able to do, for a number of these indicators, a straight like-for-like comparison. So that's one of the things that we'll need to factor into what our baseline is, and a bit like all performance indicators, there needs to be some contextual narrative there as well to help explain the information that's there. As far as reporting is concerned, we will continue to report through the scrutiny committee, as I mentioned earlier, just going through each of the 3 priorities in turn. We committed in the September Council report to doing updates to elected members. That's going to be through the executive on where we are with our corporate plan and business plan. So I'll be expecting to see these indicators featuring in these updates that come to the executive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
It's just a question on the, or a statement rather, on the performance indicators that relate to communities. Again, with reference to the pre-meeting, I mentioned the fact that youngsters seem to be omitted from this list, but in the interim, Mr Gillespie has come back with a whole list of items from the Integrated Children's Services Plan, which seems to cover consultation with that particular age group. My question, however, is if we are undertaking a very wide consultation, will the 2 systems be integrated so that we reach both adults and young people, rather than the 2 of them work separately?
Okay, Stuart, are you able to? advise?
Yep, I'll pick that up one, convener. Yes, they need to be, and we need to make sure that the two services are working closely together to make sure that there's an integrated approach to how we do our consultation, how we collect the feedback, and what we do in terms of a plan of attack, having got that information.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, convener.
Okay, I see no more hands. Are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7, the local housing strategy 2017-2022, the annual review. Mr. Gillespie.
Convener, thank you very much. The purpose of this report is to update members on the progress of the local housing strategy, which runs for 5 years from 2017 to 2022. It's required under the Housing Scotland Act 2001 that local authorities are required to develop a local housing strategy and review this regularly. Within Falkirk's local housing strategy, which is detailed within the report but also in Appendix 1, there are 6 key priorities and 43 associated actions. And this covers a period for 2018 to 19. And that's shown within Section 3 within a table to where we are. I appreciate that members have read the report in detail, so I'm only just going to go through the main body of the 6 priorities that were within Section 3, convener. Priority 1 looks at the increase of supply of housing, and we tie that back into our housing need and demand assessment, which tells us of our 10-year and housing priorities for the next 5 years. We also tie in with our local development plan 2, which was adopted on the 7th of August 2020. There's a further report, the Strategic Housing Investment Report, which will feed more into this priority after this report, convener. Priority 2 looks at creating sustainable communities, and one of the things we are doing, and it was mentioned earlier when Douglas was speaking, was tying up with town centre developments, looking at other areas such as our empty homes and how we can bring our empty homes back in. And for members' information, we managed to bring 57 empty private owned properties back in 2018-19. We also work with our local RSL partners within this area, again collaboratively to help within the communities. Priority 3 looks at improving access to housing, and one of the main changes that we have here in consultation and discussion with our colleagues under the Housing Contribution Statement, and that's our health and social care strategic plans and partners, as well as local housing strategy, work together with us. We've looked at that, and the main theme would be the change in our allocations policy, which came into effect the 1st of October 2020. Priority 4 looks at housing support for vulnerable groups. And again, that ties back into our housing contribution group that we work very closely with, our health and social care. And we've done a lot of work looking at what the future needs are of the future people of Falkirk and our residents. And that's all about how we can look at making sure that sustainability within their own home going forward. Priority 5 of the report also looks at our fuel poverty and our climate change, and within paras 316, 317, it's outlined where we are in regards to our each targets, which is sitting at 96.4% at the present time of our council stock, which is very good. And lastly, our priority 6 looks at improving housing conditions, and that ties back into our Scottish Housing Quality Standard. And at the present time, we're sitting at 97.78%. Just over the 2% that we're still to cover is usually where we can't move that on either through tenant's choice, or we have owner-occupiers in where it's classed as an improvement and not essential, and we don't have the majority to push that through. Then go back, Councillor Convener, to Section 2 of the report for the recommendations that are outlined there, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Gillespie, I'll go to Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, convener. This is the second update of our local housing strategy. This report demonstrates strength through the breadth of its content, depth of information, and details projects. This is a comprehensive document covering 6 key priorities and 43 actions. Falkirk will continue to be recognised nationally as a key performer. In relation to this report, we should congratulate staff on the excellence of their work. It would be impossible for me to highlight all aspects of this report. Instead, my theme today revolves around relationships, especially collaborative work. This report highlights the extent of collaborative working through agencies, registered social landlords, housing services, the Scottish Government, and the work of the tenants and residents groups. I have attended residents and tenant forums. The tenant scrutiny panel, through consultation, made changes to the definition of housing with care. On Wednesday, 18 September 2019, I attended the Celebrating Communities Awards in the Falkirk Town Hall. I gave out certificates to community volunteers in recognition of their hard work. From the tenant satisfaction survey, we learned that 96.8% of council tenants are satisfied with the management of the neighbourhood they live in. Also within the report, it is highlighted that there were 1,743 housing options interviews and that there were 1,017 homeless applications. In February 2019, the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan executive summary was produced. Kevin Stewart, Member of the Scottish Parliament and Housing Minister, visited the forum in August to discuss August 2019 to discuss the Falkirk Council's empty homes strategy. Also highlighted, staff have undergone training in mental health awareness and dementia awareness training. Through the Adapting for Change steering group, there were proposals agreed with the Health and Social Care Partnership regarding disabled adaptations. Progress will be reported through the Housing Contribution Statement. The report informs us that 95.6% council stock meets the energy efficiency standard in Scottish social housing. The report also highlights that 97.878% of council properties meet the Scottish Housing Quality Standard. This report is an exemplar of good practice, with many examples of projects highlighting collaborative working. We should be proud of the ambition and the success which exudes from every page of this report. This report also highlights the immense progress which has been delivered. I commend to committee the recommendations as set out in 2.1 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, convener. I'm quite glad I didn't write a speech there because my colleague Councillor Hughes has covered everything there very well, and so did Kenny during his overview. Happy to second the report, reserving the right to come back.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I will open it up to members. Okay, are we happy to accept?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Convener, I'll try to get in there. It's only a quick question for Kenny. Just, I know very well, where do we stand in the position compared to other local authorities on indicators?
Hey, Kenny.
Thanks, convener. Councillor, it depends what you mean where we stand, because we have different priorities depending on where you are with local councils. But if there's a specific area, then I'm happy to take that or chat offline in some areas, because it could be different things with different areas depending on what their priorities are within local authorities, councillor.
You're on mute, James.
Still in mute.
Open back
Go
on.
for it.
But that's two. I'll speak to Kenny offline, convener. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm happy to accept the report. Yeah. Thank you.
Agreed.
Move on to the strategic housing investment plan, and again, that's with Kerry.
Convener, thank you very much. And the purpose of our strategic housing investment programme is very much to bring, again, members up to date where we are and give a summary of our 5-year rolling programme, and make sure that over the next 5 years that we outline where we're looking to deliver our future housing need properties and how we're going to do that as well. Within section 3 of the report, over the last 12 months, it's outlined in regards to what's happened, and you'll see that the council complete 2 new build projects. We also reconfigured a block of flats for supported accommodation for young leaving care. Unfortunately, there's no new build for our RS colleagues this year, but there is in the future programme. And as in terms of buybacks, our council, the Falkirk Council bought back 80 properties, and our RSL partners brought back 5. And that's one of the things that we have been doing, is encouraging our RSL partners to be more involved about seeing where they can buy back to increase their properties within the communities as well. Again, further in section 3, it outlines the very much fluidity of the SHIP programme, where although you may see properties that or new builds that are within the programme, they can come in and out. It is not a fixed programme, although you may see a potential development there. Further along in section 3, you will see that the proposed SHIP in front of you is going to deliver 1,639 additional units. Earmarked 623 council new build, 400 buybacks, and four reconfiguration of properties. Our RSL colleagues are not far behind us with 587 new build properties, but also looking to buy back 25 additional properties. And again, as I said earlier, it's good that we've got a wealth of development going forward. Within the council new build programme of the 627 properties, including the grant funding, that will, including the grant and the council buybacks, it will have an estimated value of £143 million, with a third of that from grants and 2/3 looking to be paid subject to, obviously, agreement and further reports going forward for the next 5 years, taking that forward. I think also one of the other things I'd like to highlight within the report, convener, is our ongoing work with our infrastructure fund, and that we were awarded just over 1.1 million regards to the M80 Junction 7. Now, this work is required before the provision of additional housing, and it's been tied to affordable housing in Banknock, Danylone Head area. And I think, just to make you aware that we're still working with Scottish Government on that, because the cost of infrastructure work has increased, and at present we're still considered by our technical officer of Scottish Government. I have a meeting after this one with Scottish Government to see where we are with that as well. If I could take you to the recommendations, convener, that are laid out there, with one slight change to second recommendation, agree the changes to the buyback process. And apologies, convener, I would like to go back to that. Sorry, I've missed that bit out. Regards to buybacks, could I come back to that? Sorry. Within the section of the report, I've outlaid our buyback process, and one of the things in regards to buybacks is our need at the present time to look for larger properties. At the present time, our housing need demand says that we need larger 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom properties, and the quickest we can do that is to buy them back at the present time. Unfortunately, as members will be aware, that the housing market at the present time is very buoyant, and we are nowhere near with the pricing. We have agreement at previous executive that we can bid for properties to DV valuation and no more. What I'll be looking for today, and it's in the report, and I'll come back to recommendations, is that the executive agree that we can go 5 to 10% above DD valuation for the larger properties. This will allow us to get these properties, or give us a chance to buy back these properties to meet our housing needs and demand. However, at the same time, 5 to 10% does not start us in a bidding war with any other people out there who are looking for these properties in fair market. So apologies, Kevin, if we go back to recommendations and within the recommendations, 2 of the recommendations, it does say agree the changes to buyback process as set out in section 3.10. That should be 3.13, convener. Apologies about that, if that could be changed. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Kenny, and indeed for the clarification. If there's any issues, I'm sure with that as part of the meeting, but I'll go to Councillor Hughes first.
Thank you, convener. The SHIP document is flexible in approach, as set out in paragraph 3.4. However, due to the COVID pandemic, as set out in paragraph 3.5, projects have been delayed by on average 6 months, with the possibility of further challenges to the construction industry. The report is highlighted as realistic and flexible in approach. The SHIP is ambitious with the expectation of delivering 1,027 additional properties, consisting of 627 council new build and reconfiguration of properties, along with 400 council buybacks. It should be noted that from 2013 to the current date within the report, 25th of September 2020, the buyback programme has purchased 581 former council properties. I have visited council new build projects such as Harvey Gardens in Grangemouth, and have also visited the reconfigured flats at Gary Place in Grangemouth. Each project is of an exceptionally high quality. Council new build projects for 21-22 through to 25-26 are set out on page 75 of this report. The complete SHIP projects are set out from page 80 to 82. These projects cover many areas of the Falkirk Council area. The report offers different ways of increasing alternative affordable housing supply. For example, targeting significant larger sites, extending the buyback scheme, maximising the current housing stock through schemes such as the incentive scheme. Also, the council's ability to purchase properties would be enhanced if specific properties may be purchased at a cost of up to 10% over the home report value or district valuation price point, whichever is higher. This report has been designed to be flexible in approach and to offer different alternative approaches to meet challenging times. I commend to committee the recommendations as set out in 2.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, convener. I'd like to thank officers in Kilkenny, obviously in particular, in what I see as a realistic approach to what has been a very, very challenging year for house building. I would welcome the progress in the Torwood project, which I drive past quite regularly, so I'll just make sure it's moving along quite nicely. Fully, as Gordon has just mentioned it, I fully support the increase of 10% on cost and on the home report value. Properties have been going up. There's been a shortage of properties in the market, which has obviously pushed up the price. There's also a bit of a buy-in panic going on at the moment because people are worried about second waves and such like, so it is forcing up the price. What more particularly I picked up on it is that the 4-bedroom houses. I know that we've only bought 3 of them on buybacks out of all the buybacks we've bought. And I think, again, that's one of the main reasons it should be supported. And obviously for houses that are or can be adapted, because I think it's important to increase our stock in these. I fully support the proactive, Kerry, use of the incentive scheme, where our current stock has been under-occupied. I'm sure most of us have came across inquiries in the past where people have got larger properties and would probably like to downsize, and it's good that we're going to be more proactive on that. So this represents to me a set of positive actions in trying times, and I have pleasure in seconding the Housing Portfolio's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes. I'll open up for any questions or comments. Councillor Munro, you trying to come in yet?
Yes. Thank you, convener. Questions. On 3.6, it says Scottish Government have requested a light touch to this year's submission, and I did wonder quite what that meant. And I also wondered that given the current COVID situation and the importance of green space, which is probably driving the housing market because people want houses with gardens, whether we are moving towards sort of emphasising the importance of green space in our housing and our buybacks, and whether or not in terms of the climate change, we're also looking to get rid of gas boilers from houses because, of course, they're a major factor in the climate issue. In the list of new projects, I noticed there are only three properties for the Bowness area, but the thing is that this isn't a new project. It's actually converting what was a warden accommodation and maybe some public space in an existing elderly person accommodation. And I must confess I have reservations about that and one worry about what it is the communities feel about this sort of thing. And I know this is happening in other areas too. So that's a lot of questions for Kenny, but perhaps he can answer these.
Well, I'm sure he will. He will have an answer. Okay, Kenny.
Convener, I'll certainly try my best, and I've tried my best to write them down, Councillor Rowe. The light touch, if I go in light touch, we usually have, shall we say, a really in-depth report in regards to the build, lessons learned, things like that. It's very much they just want what's happened this year, a very high level, because they appreciate the issues that's facing officers to report on a lot of the properties that have happened due to COVID. So it's very much a position statement that they're looking for rather than a full update report that we normally do for our SHIP. You spoke about green space in regards to new build, and what I would say is we certainly look at that. We tie that back especially back to where it's areas for accessibility, for working with colleagues with Health and Social Care Partnership, looking at wheelchair, disabled, things like that. So that's certainly one of the areas. Obviously, if they're going to make sure there's free space, but also where possible for our families. And one of the things that, as I said, that we have found, demand is for a front and back door, and a front and back door with a bit of green outside as well. And we try our best to do that. There will be some circumstances where maybe some of our clientele don't want that either, shall we say. We've done some new builds in the past where they're not looking for that, and it's sometimes it just depends on the specific needs. So what I would say is there's a wide variety of that. With regards to the buybacks, we're very much determined what land goes with the buybacks when we buy that in regards to the green. So that's, we're very much, because we have only authority to buy back ex-council properties. What we do find out though is that when council properties were built in the past, there was always a bit of good sizeable land that goes with either a flatted property or a house, unless obviously, of course, it's like say the high-rise flats up in Callendar Estate and things like that. They've probably got the biggest garden going there, green there. I think that was most of the questions that you'd asked. You'd also spoke about gas, and I think that will be covered We certainly work to the building housing standards, and we'll have a housing investment report that will be coming, I think it's just after New Year, which will show our future in regards to looking at sustainability in ways there, because you're right, there's many things that we are looking at in regards to out with gas. There's other issues that councillors are looking at, hydrogen. You've also got your ground source and air source heating systems and energy efficiency as well. But certainly that's things that I think will be covered in greater detail at the future housing and investment programme report.
You haven't covered the issues around the warden accommodation that's actually been converted.
Yeah. So one of the things that we looked at regards to here was maximise the use within the building, and one of the things that we've done and spoke with colleagues and other service there is looked at how we can develop that, and we're quite comfortable that it's something that will work. We've done it elsewhere where we've converted areas quite successfully with certain clientele in mind, and I'm comfortable that it will be a success down there for you, councillor.
Thank you.
Okay, councillor.
Thanks, convener. As far as the changes to the buyback scheme is concerned, I think it's probably a sensible way forward, and I look forward to getting further information further down the line just to find out what the benefits have been. Kenny, a question for you, just in relation to the district valuer. Has there been a lot of cases where the valuation placed on a property by the district valuer has been disputed by the owner selling the properties?
Convener, Councillor Nimmo, it's not really for anybody to dispute. That just allows us to give what our benchmark price is, because they'll do their own home report, they'll have their own evaluation. It gives us a guidelines and gives the executive the comfort what they've allowed us to buy, and making sure that we don't get caught up in a bidding war either. So it's not, we don't show that as such to any of our customers because they'll have their own home report. It just allows us as a benchmark for putting a price in, councillor.
Okay, thanks, Kenny. Thanks, convener.
Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, convener. I'll be brief. I'd just like to thank Karen Strang for a really succinct and easy to read report. No overburdened with a great deal of detail, straightforward. I was glad to see on Appendix 1, First Street in it, the Old Shires Park. I mean, it's been an eyesore for years, a bone of contention, so I'm glad to see that's in the report. I just wanted to ask about, and I'm happy to support the 10%, up to 10% increase, and getting these hard to buy, hard to get properties, you know, 4 bedrooms, adaptable. So happy to support that. Just on Appendix 1, page 80, I just wanted to ask Kenny what the score is, you know? What are these scores?
Could you give me the actual number, please? Is it 3 points? Sorry, I've not got the numbers on my report. Page.
It goes developer, project name, area, total units, score.
Sorry, I know.
So what is that?
Right, so this is a question we get asked every year, and it was something that I was discussing with one of my colleagues. This is a requirement where we score the property, so it ties back to housing need and demand. So it's what's the requirement? So if we put in an area that, let's say, didn't require 4-bedroom properties, and yet the builder or RSL was coming and asking for that, we would mark that low. It would also see what the requirement for new housing is within that area. And so, for instance, we would do one just recently would have been the one at, say, Pomont, Oak Bank, where we have identified that for a lot of elderly there. So it was required when we looked at a housing needs, that gets more points for the type of housing design and build for these areas. So that's your scoring that works there. And we've got a matrix, and certainly happy, Councillor Bissett, to speak to you offline and go through the full matrix. There's about 8 to 9 different matrix scoring aspects on that to go through before we can get a table to put these properties forward for the SHIP. And that's the things Councillor Monroe had asked earlier about light touch. These are the things that we would have put in a fuller report going back to Scottish Government of where each of these projects came within that scoring list.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll take your word for it.
Okay, any further, Councillor Alexander?
Yeah, to prove if I can unmute myself within 60 seconds. The score was, I was interested in that myself. I actually thought it was a Batman drew on each one of the penalties. But yeah, I'm also glad to see the First Street's involved in the programme, because it's a major problem area for us. The quality of housing down there is pretty awful. But basically since Jim Middlemas and those, like Councillor Reid will remember ex-Councillor Middlemas and the enthusiasm that he had for two things. First of all was East Township Football Club, and secondly was for maintaining the standard in First Street as it was at the time. I'm sure Jim would be very saddened to see the state it is at the moment. But also the other programmes that are in the area, and even progress reports.
Councillor Alexander? Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Convener. I'm just checking the same as David Marshall to see if it was going to jump back into mute again. Just a quick question for Kenny on page 2, where it says places for people, Miller, Bowness, Miller Homes. Is that their allocation for the 25% of the housing for social housing, Kenny? I just wondered what that was. Thank you. Thanks, Convener.
Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, we're happy to agree the report.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. Move on to item 9, which is the CCTV and mobile cameras, and it was the update that was asked for at the last executive. And are you going to take it? Right, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, my apologies, my screen changed at the same time.
That's okay, no problem. As you say, Convener, this is a report that flows from the CCTV report considered by the executive at its last meeting. And at its last meeting, members requested a number of pieces of information be brought back to committee and included in today's report. So today's report seeks to deal with these matters. Currently, we've got 75 fixed cameras and 5 mobile cameras. The mobile cameras all support the prevention of fly tipping. Currently, the cameras can't be integrated into our current analogue CCTV monitoring system, and that's a bit of a problem for us. As members know, our current CCTV system is really at the end of its useful life, and the new cameras that are on the market are all digital in nature and not compatible with our current analogue system, so can't be actively monitored. Paragraph 4.2 of the report sets out the actions that are currently being taken to scope out what the current cameras, or where the current cameras are, the locations of possible sites for cameras to monitor antisocial behaviour, where mobile cameras can be used on other sites, and really get ourselves ready for the procurement process. Section 4.3 of the report looks at the funding that's in the capital programme. we've got a provision of about £630,000 that's been made for the new system and cameras. The report in October mentioned that the procurement itself may be less than the £630,000 that's in the capital programme, and that any balance would be used to procure new mobile cameras. So once procurement costs are known, we'll start to make contact with partners over future funding arrangements. So I think in summary, convener, it's too soon, I think, to provide committee with all of the information that they were looking for, because in large measure we're just in the middle of preparing ourselves for that procurement process. We do expect to have the information once we've completed the scoping and procurement work. That's expected to be completed in the course of the next few months. So accordingly, the recommendation included in the report is that we have a report back to members in early 2021, which will cover off the remaining information that elected members are looking for. Recommendations, convener, are set out in section 2 of the report. Happy to answer questions that members have. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, convener. I think we can all agree on the potential positives of mobile CCTV units as part of the Council's approach to reduce antisocial behaviour. Examples given in 3.1 very much reinforce that. I have been speaking to Karen in particular on, and a couple of bits went to Stuart yesterday, and I know they've been really busy because it's a very short timeline, because this was supposed to go a lot earlier than in the year, and obviously a number of things have been held up. And I've got to congratulate Karen and Stuart for the speed that the team are moving it. I know that you are looking at the paying the staff. You're looking to do discussions with partnership with the police on it. And as you've already said, importantly, the procurement strategy has been worked out just now before obviously you move to the actual procurement. I think the survey work that's having to be done when you're taking the current 75 cameras and trying to make sure that they'll all tie in, because sure that we go camera to camera and they'll all be slightly different in the way they've all got to be connected, so that when it does happen and when the button's pressed on it, we get it all operational properly. So I think it's right, and I think once all that survey work's done and the procurement strategy is done to get the procurement done, I think it's right to bring it back, and I do look forward to the report coming in the early new year. I'm going to keep it short because I think Stuart has covered probably some of the most relevant points in it, and I say I therefore propose the acceptance of the recommendations in item 2. Thank you.
Councillor Bowes. Councillor Alexander. You're on mute. That's it.
Hello. Got it. Within 60 seconds. You think the progress has been made in terms of technology in the last 20 years? You think of the 35mm cameras that people had and used, compared to the digital cameras that we have now contained in our phone, and everywhere we seem to have the ability to record. Then it's not unreasonable to expect the report to be quite condemning of something that was 20 years old. And obviously the cameras that are in place at the moment are 20 years old. I know they're 20 years old because it was myself as the convener of Policy and Resources at the time that the recommendation, which was to purchase these cameras, and just old. But the benefit of these cameras is that so many of them are mobile, that everyone should share in the benefits of having CCTV spread throughout the district. It's a year that there's problem areas and where these problem areas are. You all more or less list them for our own wards. But whether it be fly tipping, whether it be crime, whether it be disturbance, whether it be antisocial behaviour, whatever,
Apologies.
Technology nowadays.
Yes. Technology went. Went. Councillor Alexander, are you still with us?
yes, the irony of in terms of what I was saying is what happened here. Put it that way. Happy to second the recommendations and to move on. Hopefully, get the procurement over quickly, and we can see some early benefits to the areas of Falkirk Council.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Harris, you wanted to come in?
Thanks, Convener. Just a point of clarification on page 85.4.3. Is the 632, is that a typo, or just confirm that the budget is 630k, or is the 632, is there an extra 20k somewhere slipped in by creative accounting or otherwise?
I'm sure either Mr Ritchie or Mr Smale will be able to confirm the capital allocation.
Yeah, I'm happy to pick that up, Convener. So in total, the capital allocation was just short of £1 million that was allocated for CCTV. Some of it was for the control centre, some of it was to pick up on the alarm receiving aspect of the new control centre, and the balance, which is the largest element, is for the procurement of the new CCTV system and cameras. So, as Councillor Harris has said, sometimes we've referred to it as being circa 630, and sometimes we've made the specific reference to 632. I think the issue is that either way, whether it's 632 or 630, we're expecting to make savings in that when we get to procurement, and we'll report back on that in the report that's referred to in the recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bissett, you wanted to come in?
I would just like to thank Councillor Black for actually raising this. She brought it to our attention that around there's a mobile unit set up in Bowhouse, and it does show that it reduces antisocial behaviour. So, and she mentioned the 15 mobile units in Stirling. So that's what prompted this report, really. So I'm glad to see it here and sort of fleshed out a bit. I just wanted to ask Stuart, he said, I think in February we allocated the sum for transference from analogue to digital. Is that separate from this report, or is this what we're talking about here? And also, what is the police contribution to this? Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. So yes, the analogue to digital transfers included in the values that are referred to, and the police make a revenue contribution on an annual basis, but that's something that we're going to go back and speak to them and other partners about once we've got through the procurement process and we know what the values are that we're looking at.
An annual discussion that we have with the police, because it's not something that they have discretion for locally. It's something that nationally has got to be agreed.
the spend, so it tends to take a wee bit longer to get through the process. But there are no doubt, certainly locally, the police locally see the benefits of the CCTV and helping them be able to deploy resources as required, particularly of an evening time in and around town centres. Okay, is there any other member? Councillor Nimmo?
Thanks, convener. I think it is a worthwhile investment, but only if we take appropriate action to enforce the fines that we're handing out. I know there was a big article in the Falkirk Herald recently, and I'd asked officers prior to that for a list of information along similar lines, and I'm still waiting on a reply. Thanks, convener.
Perhaps you can maybe reiterate that to, I don't know whether it would be Douglas's team around the antisocial behaviour. I'm sure information can be made available.
I'll go down to the Chief Executive, convener.
Okay, we'll pick that up. And it's maybe one of those emails that's come in at a time when it's been extremely busy, and it may have just slipped through the net. Okay, Mr. Moody's indicated he's got it, so he will get that actioned.
Can we maybe get an indication as to how we're going to enforce future fines? Because it doesn't seem as if we've done a very good job up until now.
Fines in relation to antisocial behaviour?
Well, that was part of the piece that was printed in the Falkirk Herald. As far as I know, there's been no cases referred to the fiscal or to the sheriff for non-payment.
The issuing body apologies for feedback. Ms. Moody.
Yes, thank you, convener. I'm happy to pick up these points separately and come back directly to Councillor Nimmo, having consulted with Mr. Duff and his team.
Thanks for that, convener.
Okay, if no other members, I'd be happy to agree the report.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Item 10 is assets separate to operational requirement, Council HQ and Arts Centre project. And we'll go to Mr. Duff.
Thanks, convener. So this report follows on from the report that we presented to Council on 30 September, where it was agreed to proceed with the Council's HQ and Arts Centre project. And this looks to formalise the agreement to dispose of assets that we consider are made surplus to operational requirements, and therefore we should look to run down and dispose as a consequence of the decision that was reached on the HQ project. So we're recommending to declare properties at Sealock House, Denny Townhouse, Kilns House, the borough buildings in Falkirk Town Centre, Abbotsford House and Rossvale surplus to operational requirements, and that based on that we would commence a programme to phase the rundown of these properties and dispose of them. And we do flag up that some of these are common good assets and therefore have to be treated in accordance with the provisions for common good. The work allows us to progress the various work streams that are underway for the HQ project. These are progressing at the present time, allowing us to proceed with the opening up of the building at Thomas Cook, Central Park in Larbert, and the work at the stadium, and also to finalise the design for the new HQ in the town centre. And in doing that, we're noting that a number of the properties we currently occupy are no longer required, and that if we were to proceed with their disposal, that could generate capital receipts and revenue budget savings that could be contributed towards the HQ business case, or if achieved sooner, could assist with the council's financial position. We set out in the report details of a number of the properties and their circumstance. So the list of properties includes Sealock House, currently occupied by Children's Services, and we suggested that could be run down with possibly early vacation and disposal during 21-22. Denny Town House, which is a common good asset, which if we find suitable properties to move the Health and Social Care Partnership, that could be vacated and would achieve a receipt for the common good for Denny. Kilns House has been marketed for some time, but the common good constraints on that have inhibited investment in the property, and therefore we're looking to progress disposal by seeing it disposed of from the common good account. There would be a receipt to the Falkirk common good, and that would allow the investment to take place in that property. The old borough buildings in Newmarket Street, we're anticipating we'd require that for operational purposes until the new HQ is up and running, but that we would make steps to allow its disposal and again to see a receipt for the Falkirk common good once vacated in 2023-24. Abbotsford House, we're suggesting that could be vacated once the new HQ accommodation is on stream, and that could then be sold on the open market and potentially reused for housing purposes. And at Rossvale and Camlin, we would look to redeploy staff, and a number of different operations take place on that site. So we would work with the services to relocate staff and then place that on the open market. So we will progress a programme of consultation with staff, trade unions, etc. in the course of these works, but really at this stage looking to achieve agreement that they be deemed surplus to requirements, with the capital receipts coming forward to contribute towards the council's budget, including obviously the business case for the HQ. And there is a need to account for the lost income that would come to the commercial portfolio for Sealock House, because that is currently on the commercial estate of the council. And also we would advise the relevant common good committees of the proposals for disbursement of the funds that they are receiving. There's detail at paragraph 6.3 on the legal process that has to be gone through for disposal of common good assets, and our intention would be to follow that process. So really looking to progress this formally in terms of the council's decision to nominate these as surplus to requirements and to proceed with their disposal. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Douglas. Councillor Alexander.
Yes, Convener. Thanks very much. They're all pretty straightforward. And members could have identified these properties from their own experience. The new for old is something that is worth pursuing, and these buildings create a real problem for us, because there's never been a proper maintenance program put in place. And as a consequence, these become tired, they become unfit for use, and what we have now, I think, is an opportunity, and it's an opportunity that they help for both hands. With that, I formally move the recommendations contained there.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. I think considering of where we are, and we spoke about the budget process and the gap that we've got this year, by having the opportunity for early release of these properties without having to come back on a case-by-case basis, to members will improve the potential cash flow, enable early marketing of the properties, and overall will give a saving of about just over £1 million in recurring savings costs around the running of the properties, and that would be very welcome at a time when budgets are very pressured, because we shouldn't really be spending our money continually maintaining or continually using older inefficient buildings. We should be able to direct our finances to those at the front line, and this is a way of an opportunity of being able to do that, and making sure that the investments that we do have are in more modern and more efficient buildings, as well as enabling better working practices. So I'm more than happy to second the report and allow officers then to get on and do some of the work that they need to do in getting that transformational programme for the council going forward. Yeah, Councillor Munro.
Thank you, convener. I have major concern direction of this project. In the very lengthy 10-hour full council meeting, we went through from having a very large new council office in the centre of the town, small council office in the centre of the town with maybe just over 100 people, and a small art centre that isn't to be called an art centre. And this is a very large material change to what was planned, because what was originally planned was to bring more people into the town centre and to rid the council of the silos and replace what was one very old building, which is the building in the town centre, and it seems to have grown arms and legs. And having agreed that we have a new town centre HQ that's much smaller, we're now talking about a building out at Larbert and the fitting out of the remaining part of the Falkirk Stadium, which has been empty for many years, to accommodate staff, which in effect is actually putting staff further out of Falkirk. So there are lots of questions here about are people coming into Falkirk or are they going out? And I also have major reservations about how long these people that are being moved out to this building at Larbert, which seemingly will accommodate several hundred people, although I'm not quite sure of the exact number. When is it they're coming back, and which building it is they're coming back to, and when? So I think this is not a very clear policy at the time, and yet we're rushing down this road of getting rid of these properties. And if we as councillors don't have answers to these questions right now, then I can't imagine how we're at a stage where we can actually dispose of these properties. So I actually believe that this proposal is quite premature, given that we don't have the detail and we don't have any financials either.
Can I just remind you that we've already made a decision, and this is what flows from that decision. The decision was taken at council to relocate to Larbert and Stadium, and to have office accommodation and a replacement town hall within our town centre. So I think we're in danger of trying to rerun the council meeting when the decision's already been taken, and this is this is decisions that now require to be taken from the back of that to go forward. to allow all of that to happen.
Convener, that's not the case. What we need is the overall facts. With the council meeting, there were a very large number of changes. It could have been a very large office on the current site, or as has been voted for, and I didn't vote for it, as you know, a much smaller ones. But the consequences that flow from that have not been explained or the questions answered. And I think it's entirely appropriate, given the very large amount of money that we're spending, that these questions are answered.
Douglas, perhaps you can maybe bring a bit of clarity to this for me.
I'm happy to help, Convener, and maybe to explain some of the rationale in the approach that we're suggesting here. And I mean, clearly, the council decision was reached, and it was reached on hopefully a very full report that gave an update to the business case for the project with considerable detail on the makeup of the accommodation to be provided, the workstations ratios that were being applied there, and the financial underpinnings to the business case. So, you know, there was quite considerable detail gone into there. I should highlight in regard to the provision of the office accommodation in the town centre that we do anticipate that the desk space there will offer accommodation for probably equivalent to the numbers that are occupying the municipal building. And by the time we use the desk space ratio of 0.5 desks per person, then we expect there'll probably be 300, 400 people using that building. So it will continue to attract people to the town centre. And, you know, the intention is very much to sustain the vibrancy of the town centre through that investment. When it comes to the arrangements between the building at Warbert, the stadium, and the new headquarters, we have, you know, noted that the provision can be interim. It will be for the council to decide at a point in time when we're working up more detail on the business case for the design of the HQ, just what extent the needs should continue to be met from those other buildings. That's something we're working on at the present time. We're consulting with different services across the council to finalise their full requirements for the project, and that will be the basis of a decision.
So I think it has been fairly fully explained, and the direction of travel and then the decision that was taken at council, Councillor Munro, and that's where we now need to go. We need to get on with this project. I've got Councillor Kerr and then Councillor Nimmo.
Thank you, Convener. A couple of questions on. We know that these buildings will need to go eventually. With regards, as Kenny Gillespie spoke earlier, buildings and houses is very buoyant at the moment. If we put these up for sale and they go quick, have we got a plan where these people are going to go and where they've got to be allocated for out of these places, and including municipal buildings added to that? Because that's a lot of people. Will they all fit in? Well, I suppose Aberystwyth House will not go until the end, but the rest of them, will they all fit into the two places where we've says that we're going to allocate them to?
I'll bring Douglas in a minute, but my understanding is that the properties will not be marketed until the relocation has taken place of the staff. but what it does allow is for that to be planned, done in a planned way, and that we know when the staff will be moved from one property, we can start the marketing exercise at that stage. So it's not a case of marketing it just now and then having to find places for the staff to go. Is that correct, Douglas? Is that my understanding correct in that?
Yeah, I mean, the report refers to a phased rundown and disposal, and this is seeking authorisation to proceed with that phasing and for those actions. So we are consulting with services at the present time about their needs. So just to confirm their needs, there was a lot of detail in the business case that we reported to council. We had high-level assumptions and numbers anticipated from services as to what their requirements would be. But this is what we're now verifying with the corporate management team across different services in the council, and we will determine the locations that staff could be directed towards to allow that rundown to take place. So it is we're very active on this point at the present time, and that will be the basis by which we would allocate space.
And it's basically covered within the recommendation 2 of the report on that. Is that suffice, Councillor Kerr?
I understand what we're saying, but we speak about it could be £1 million. Not £1 million for next year's budget, because we've only itself for that. So I understand in the long term that's where it'll go, which apart from the common good fund properties, but the big buildings will go to the council, but it'll be too late, or it'll not be enough time for next year's budget. I would have liked, same as Councillor Monroe, I would have liked to have seen what Douglas says. He's going to get a report on each area. I'd like that done before we agreed it.
That's not what we agreed at council going forward, and I disagree. I disagree with your assumption that we won't get much by way of support for this year's budget. I think if we are able to push ahead with the buildings around particularly the Thomas Cook building being the biggest of the building, then it could start to release some of those properties fairly early on, and that would be a significant help both in the capital and within the revenue savings to this year's coming budget. And in order to do that, we need to give officers the freedom to move on with this and move it at pace in order to actually be able to achieve the maximum savings out of this. Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'd like to pick up on some of the things that Councillor Monroe highlighted there. I don't think that all the financial information is contained in this report. If you look at page 98 at 4.11, there's no cost information contained in there. What's the capital cost of moving part of the service into the library? There isn't a figure attached to that. We know how much it's going to cost.
That's the next report, Alan.
Apologies, I think you're on the wrong report. We're still on the asset surplus to requirements. I think
apologies, I've jumped one. Sorry.
Okay. You've given us fair warning, though. Okay. Is there any other questions or comments in relation to Councillor Reid? Then I'll bring in the Chief Executive.
Okay, the question of the transfer to the Common Good Fund is an interesting one. I think we might look forward to some court cases in that respect in the future. There's quite concern over Scotland about the depletion of common good funds over the years. Yeah. In fact, ours, which is quite a handsome sum, has come down about 25% in the last 10 years. So we can't count on it being applied to the revenue budget. But I look forward to seeing your court.
But my understanding is the receipt from any common good would not go into the revenue budget. It would go into the Common Good Fund and available for communities. The contribution to the revenue budget would be, for example, I think Denny Townhouse, where we actually have some running costs. By relocating there would be savings. But these properties aren't going to give a lot to the revenue budget, but would certainly give opportunities for communities by topping up the common good funds.
I think the council could use it, but it'd have to go to court, I think.
Yes, and I'm not sure we would want to. We would need to take a business case about the benefits that we get out of that, as opposed to the costs that in going to court to be able to do that.
Okay.
But we have seen some good examples of where common good funding and particularly within communities can make that work for them, and I think that's something that we need to explore. I'm going to bring in Kenneth, who wanted to make comment.
Yes, thank you, convener. Just relatively briefly, I mean, firstly, the reference to recommendation 2 is very important, because clearly there'll be a programme of phased rundown and disposal, and that will absolutely align with the occupation of the new buildings, and that's the work that Douglas was talking about, that we're planning and managing through the corporate management team and through the project. And I suppose the other thing that's just worth touching on, Councillor Kerr's point about the timing of disposals and the impact on the budget. And as members know, we've got a number of financial flexibilities which are going to be available to us in terms of dealing with the budget gap in 21-22. And one of these is roundabout capital receipts. And my understanding, and Brian might be able to clarify, but my understanding is that any capital receipts during the year 21-22 could be used in order to help plug that revenue gap, which may be of importance to us. So if we think about the timing of the, in association with the Thomas Cook building in Larbert and the potential release, most obviously, I suppose, of Sealock House, then there is some potential, I think, for the capital receipt from that to support our revenue position for next year.
Thank you, Kenneth. Wanted to come in?
I think Councillor Bissett had his hand up before.
Right, apologies. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, convener. Just on the capital and revenue receipts, I had thought the HQ Arts Centre project was to be a spend to save project, and that capital revenue receipts would go in to help pay off the loan, so there'd be less impact on the revenue budget. And the other question I wanted to ask was, how do you decide a common good building?
Okay, I'll go to talk about the spend to save, and you may be able to go on. If not, Colin Moody will come.
Yeah, the report to the council had the business case that set out the expected receipts and revenue savings that would arise from vacating these properties, and that's what the business case was built on. It identified savings that could be used to contribute to the overall business case. So there was a spend to save component that involved there, and that's what we've been holding to and moving this forward. And the only area where there is the provision for consideration of that by the executive is that if these are advanced sooner, then that could give a financial benefit to the council, and therefore it may mean that gives benefit for the council's budget next year or the following. But it would still need to be addressed when it comes to the final decision and commitments to be made on the delivery of the HQ, both in terms of the cost of borrowing and in its operations. And that's work that we will do with Brian's team to work through what the ongoing consequences of that would be. But the point we're making in this report is that if we advance this sooner, then there could be a financial benefit to us, and that makes clear sense. And in relation to the common good assets, there is a process by which assets are received onto the common good, and these are captured in the title of those assets. They're then administered by the council as the lead body for the operation of the common good funds, and the common good committees are established to determine the disbursement of those funds. There is a formal process by which the common goods assets can be taken from those burdens removed, and they can be disposed of. But as Councillor Reid was noting, that can involve quite a lengthy process through the court. I don't know whether Colin would want to give any further clarity on that point.
Yes, thank you, Convener. On the Councillor Bissett's specific point on how do you tell when an asset is a common good asset, it takes quite a lot of work to do that, because it's not always apparent on the title, so the title deeds themselves, that something is common good. And it does take a bit of delving in archival material as well to make the final assessment on that. But the broad criteria are that it has to be property which was owned by one of the former boroughs, so one of the 4 borough councils within the Falkirk Council area. It has to have been acquired for purposes other than a statutory purpose. So if it was, say, acquired for roads purposes or for public baths, something of that kind, it wouldn't be common good. It has to be something more generally for community use. And broadly, we have been working on that over the past couple of years, because there's a provision in the Community Empowerment Act which requires councils to prepare a register of their common good property. That is in preparation at the moment, and I know that Mr Duff's colleagues are working on that, and that has helped to determine that there are more properties which have a common good status than perhaps might have originally have been appreciated by our predecessors. So those are the broad criteria which we use to determine whether something is common good or not.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. On just as Councillor Munro had mentioned about stuff moving out of the town centre, from the list that's there, the only building which I think is actually up in the town centre, I know Killins is beside municipal, is actually the Falkirk Borough Halls. But if I'm right, is it not Falkirk Delivers that are currently in there? And are they not intending on leaving the building? So the actual impact, and they're going somewhere else, so we're not actually removing anything from. Would that be right?
Yes, it's picked up in the next report, Councillor, that we have got a proposal for those buildings on an interim basis, but we understand that Falkirk Delivers are looking to relocate in the town centre on the high street, so that allows another proposal on the hub to come forward, and it's what part of this phase rundown that we see would apply to those buildings to allow us to eventually move the services across to the HQ and dispose of the property.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Harris.
Sorry for the delay, I have to wake my mouse up. What would help me a little, I take in all that's been said and all about the dilapidated properties and everything else. I get the bit about the interim. Some of the staff are going to Larbert, some of the staff will be moving to the stadium. And then we've agreed on council building in the centre of town with an associated arts centre. Now, I get that. The plan was to rationalise, I think, where everybody was, to try and bring the staff together and to break down silos. So I've got to the bit where we're working out of Larbert and the stadium. What's the final goal? In other words, where is the government or the council going to be working from once it's all through? Are we still going to be in Larbert and a wee bit in the High Street, a wee bit at the stadium? Or where's the final master plan? Because I don't seem to have got really, maybe I'm being stupid, but I really haven't got an idea of where we might be when this all, when all the cards fall in, say, 10 years' time. Where are we going to be? You know, where will the public be able to come and see the deliberations of council as they can at the moment? Who's going to be working here? Are we still going to be working out of two sites? So that won't answer the question of silo. So I'm really kind of asking, what's the vision for, we're talking about something, a 5 to 10 year project. Where are we actually heading to? Because I'm not clear where we're heading to at the moment. I know where we're going in the interim, but I don't know what the final solution is. Has anybody got a clue?
Douglas, do you want to talk a wee bit about that? I mean, obviously, we take into account of COVID, new ways of working, and as a result, the potential savings and efficiencies that can be brought from those new ways of working, as well, that allows us to be able to direct again to the frontline services, and that the intention is always to have a front-facing office accommodation within our town centre, and we would hope that that would be where the deliberations of the council would be, because it was always intended that that would be a civic area. But there's a lot of things that could influence that and what happens to the interim arrangements.
Yes, so as you say, Councillor, and to convener mentioned there, there is some uncertainty about what the future office pattern is going to look like, given the impact that we've had with COVID, and what things will be what the shape of things will look like post-COVID. So, and the report in September dealt with that. It mapped out short, medium, and long term, and that there were some measures that we would need to take in the short term, which clearly just now have the large part of the services working from home. Medium term, we expect that staff will be able to return to offices, and we need to resolve what that requirement's going to look like. And then longer term, we need to see fundamentally what services see as their office requirement. And that probably will still involve a blend of home and office working. I think all of the academic work and work elsewhere in the industry is pointing to the fact that home working is going to be a permanent feature of this type of office working in the future, but that people will want to come together, and they'll want to come together to meet, to collaborate, to progress joint work, and very much take forward that suggestion of breaking down silos. So we see that as very much the intention of this project, and we're participant to a number of groups working on these kinds of questions nationally to make sure that we come up with the optimal design of offices that meet our needs. Coming from that work, we want our services to work with us to define what their office requirement will be, and that will allow us to confirm what our needs are not just in terms of what we provide at the new HQ, but how we would look to use the Larbert building or the stadium longer term. And we would expect coming from that, our desk space requirement is going to be right down. You know, we're currently up at 1.3 desks per person. We expected we could get down to 0.6. We could be, some places are getting down to 0.3. And so if we attend to that, if we achieve that kind of order, then you could be looking at a very efficient office HQ in the town centre and a small level of provision elsewhere. That's the question that we need to determine just now, and we're working on it in order to reach a decision. So that will be something that will come back to the council eventually for decision on the project.
So for clarity, the current vision is that we will be working on different sites. A significant proportion might be working on a different site from the centre. Is that all right in saying that that's the current vision? That's where we hope to get, pending all. I appreciate what you say about office provision and working from home and the like. So we're still going to be talking about a council that is not all together, but that is working significantly. I appreciate at the moment there are little pockets that work in different places, like Denny Townhouse. These are, in the grand scheme of things, quite insignificant. At the moment, we've got 3 major departments and 3 major directorates working out of 3 different places, or 3 independent places. We're going to bring that down to, I guess, the 3 working out of 2, or something like that. Is that the vision?
In the short term.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the long term. In the short term, we've got 3 people. Well, we've got 3 working out of 2. In the longer term, is that the plan?
In the longer term, we have currently got our options open until we actually be able to determine what the future is. And that's no different to any other local authority right now, because everyone is having to reassess their business needs. What we do have is coming out of buildings that aren't necessarily owned by the council into council buildings, council-owned buildings, and utilising them because they are far more efficient than some of the ones that we have been working from as well. So there are cost benefits there to doing that. But we still know that the new build project within the town centre is still a number of years away before that is realised, and we can't do nothing in the interim, and therefore that's why it's an interim arrangement, and it will be reviewed. And at that time, once we do have what's agreed within the town centre, we can look at the stadium and Thomas Cook, and both or either of them may well be at a point where we could remarket them for future use or for other tenants. But at this moment in time, we know that they wouldn't be marketable. But as a council, we can use them to the best effect right now.
I don't argue with the arrangements. I'm just trying to see if we've got an idea about where we're trying to get to finally. Thanks, Convener.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. If I can just draw this back a bit to the recommendations. Agrees to declare the following properties are surplus to operational requirements. Yes, I fully agree. And the aspect that I really agree as well is these buildings will never be able to be adapted if we're ever serious about making our climate emergency targets. And I'm sure Councillor Munro, Councillor Coombs and Councillor Harris will fully agree with that being part of the climate emergency team. So yes, the recommendations that are set there, I fully agree with. I see where some of the comments and questions are coming from. But yeah, going back to the report, I fully agree with the comments, with the recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Kerr, you've been in. I'll let you again, but you have been in already.
I'm not sure this is it. Well, I didn't know we're going to ask for this. I would like a couple of minutes recess, Conveners, to talk with my 2 colleagues to see if we are going to bring an amendment or not bring an amendment. would that be possible, or is that past? We didn't have one planned. We didn't have one planned, but listening to Councillor Munro and Councillor Harris's questions and my own questions, it's something that I would like to ask them. If this is something that we.
Okay, we have a 10-minute recess.
Fine, convener.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I think everybody is now back. Okay, Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, convener, and thank you very much for allowing us a wee breakout there. We will only be putting an amendment forward because we recognise the need to get rid of these buildings. What we were trying, and I think that the things we're trying to get was what the long-term goal of our new headquarters and arts centre, with taking the people out of Falkirk, whether they were coming back. So we were just trying to get to where the long-term goal was, convener, that's all. So thank you very much.
I think that may be clarified as the work goes forward. We have a meeting coming up with each of the potential partners around our town centre developments, and members will have an opportunity. And during that process, I think it will flush out what's possible in the town centre, and obviously the costs will be a major factor in all of that as well. But I thank you for that, and therefore can we accept the report?
Great.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 11, which is the Central Advice and Support Hub update and interim solutions. And I think, Douglas, you're going to take it with Stuart's assistance if required.
Convener, sorry, is Councillor Alexander on the call?
Yeah. He's there.
Now.
Yes, convener. So I'll go through the report, and there may be points for Stuart to add detail, particularly relating to the delivery of services for the proposed hub. So again, this follows through from the decision of the Council on 30th September on the HQ project, and members will be familiar with the project we were looking at previously to relocate and establish our advice services in a central hub facility at a location in the town centre. There had been a report in 18th of February this year considering the options for that replacement and acknowledging that further work had to take place on it. But given that we now have the decision on the headquarters, we believe that we can bring forward an interim solution to that requirement, and this report suggests how that be taken forward, and that through that we could agree to the termination of the lease at Calendar Square for the one-stop shop, and that we could progress an interim solution at the borough buildings in Falkirk and at the Falkirk Library. So the report goes into some of the background relating to this proposal, particularly acknowledging the effect of COVID on the services that operate through advice hubs, where increasingly these have been moved towards online delivery, and that involves a operation of services through a digital and telephone assistance, an appointment-based solution which we would look to establish where we could manage face-to-face appointments in a safe location, that we would have a smaller face-to-face facility where people could just present seeking advice and support, and also acknowledge that increasingly we're relying on outreach services where our staff can meet with people in the locations that they are using, whether that be community centres, food banks, in the Salvation Army, the high flats premises, or through the college or supermarkets, basically anywhere that they might require the service and are accessible. And therefore, we believe that that may be a more appropriate model to deliver longer term. We are making provisions through the service to allow for that form of operation, and we understand from speaking to customers that that is agreeable to them. In relation to contact centre, we've also been recruiting some additional staff to enable and support that call handling process. So through establishing that model, we believe we can be more efficient, but also offer better quality services to our customers. And in the course of that, it allows us to give up the premises that we occupy at Callendar Square. The lease was extended for 2 years for those premises, but that incurs a cost of around 300k per year. And we believe now that it would make sense to relinquish those leases and allow the council to relocate. It also allows the landlord to be clear as to his intentions for the property, acknowledging that they may in time look towards working with us on the delivery of the HQ project. We have looked comprehensively at the options for delivery of hub solutions in the town centre. We looked in considerable detail at co-location at Falkirk Library, but the remodelling required and upgrade to the building would have incurred costs exceeding £1 million, and therefore we didn't feel that that was appropriate to proceed with. We looked at co-locating with other partner agencies, converting premises in the municipal buildings, and at locations in the town centre and the high street, etc. Each of these would have incurred capital costs, an ongoing revenue commitment, and none of them very cost effective, and therefore we didn't feel that they were appropriate solutions. We felt it better to look for an interim solution, acknowledging the council's decision on forming the advice hub as part of the new HQ project. And therefore we're suggesting that we could establish an interim facility for the period through to 2024 or till the HQ project comes on stream, and that would involve an appointments-based service operating out of the borough buildings, aligned with our council registration services and the fact that Falkirk Delivers are going to relocate to the active travel hub on the high street. So that has a tangible benefit in reuse of those buildings. We're also suggesting that we would co-locate services for those who want to drop in to access face-to-face support, and we would establish that at the Falkirk Library, and that would offer advice on council tax, housing benefit, welfare, debt and housing inquiries, so a range of benefits there. We'd suggest that by doing that, we would make the minimum necessary alterations to those buildings, so basically allow accommodation of these activities with the minimum alteration to the fit out and so on of the buildings, and also incur the minimal amounts in the running costs for the premises, allowing that a saving would come from withdrawing from Callendar Square. It also gives the benefit of these services co-locating and understanding how their services can work together when it comes to operating in the new HQ premises. So in financial terms, we see that there could be a saving of around 300k that has been built into the HQ model for delivery of the project, but clearly could have benefit early on. And also that there are 670k of capital funds in the capital programme, which we would look to use for the minimum amount of work necessary to reshape each of the buildings, and therefore would offer a level of saving against that budget in how we should progress. So as mentioned, looking to progress with the project, as it allows us to offer an interim solution to meet our Advice Hub needs, and allows savings to be achieved for the council and helps us deliver the model looking towards the longer term. So we're asking to agree, terminate the leases at Calendar Square and proceed with that interim solution. Happy to take any questions.
Has Cecil dropped out?
I think I've seen a wee triangle in her name previously there. So I don't know if her internet's went.
There's a message.
Here she comes. She's running in her chair.
Apologies. Yes, there seems to be a bit of an issue with the bandwidth on that. Thank you, Douglas, for that. I think that this is again as part of our bigger plan around the relocation of our buildings, and we'd also always wanted to be able to give the same level of service in Central Falkirk as we had been able to give to other places around the hub. COVID has again changed the way of working, and as a result we have to review the models of the hub and the way that they operate, and that right across the council area as well. It's recognised though that we do need to have a front-facing office, a public office within Falkirk Town Centre. And the original plan was to move obviously to the library, but that then incurred some difficulties and significant levels of costs associated with that. So we then had to revisit that, and now has given us another opportunity to actually look at what type of service we can get, remembering that it is an interim service and that we'll be looking at. It's not perfect, but it would be able to fulfil the needs that people tell us they require. So having services available at the borough buildings, at the Falkirk Library, but also having the outreach work that's able to be done, I think we'll be able to actually provide a much more bespoke service to those that actually need that level, and while others have found ways of actually accessing services online. Moving into our own buildings, there's savings to be made. We know that Falkirk Delivers are moving to Falkirk within the town centre itself, therefore there's spare capacity within the building that would be shared with the registrar's office. It's a good accessible building in that respect, for the type of service we would be looking to provide. So I'm happy to move the report. I note in the report the costs that were originally anticipated at the library, and the other solutions that we'd looked at aren't going to be anywhere near as significant as the budget that was provided, and therefore there'll be additional savings there that can be ploughed back into providing the revenue aspects, as well as some of the other savings that we require to be made as part of our budget deliberations. So I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. We are happy to second and reserve right to come back.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open it up for any questions or comments. Councillor Bissett.
The 300k that will be released by moving to Calendar Square, is that going directly to the HQ project? And if we couldn't go into the library before, how can we go into it now? What's the difference, and what will the setup be within the library?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bissett. Douglas.
So the 300k was built into the HQ business case, but it may help actually, Brian, if you were able to come in just with a bit of detail on how you anticipate the funds being used in relation to the HQ business case and the council's more general budget situation. Brian may be able to explain how that may work. But as we say, we built it into the costing for the HQ project, but we'll work very closely with Brian's team in terms of how those monies are used in the intervening period. In terms of the operations at the library, this is something we're working on at the present time, but the intention previously was to do some quite major works at the library that would involve operation of some of the services up the stairs in the library, and would have had to involve a provision of a new lift and some major alterations to the building. We're now looking to accommodate in the main the services on the ground floor, which would involve less scale of works needing to take place to the building. We're still speaking that through with our contacts in the trust as to how the relationship between the two services will operate, but we don't expect anything like the order of works that was proposed previously. Again, Stuart may want to clarify how we intend taking that forward.
Okay, thanks, Douglas. I'll go to Brian and then I'll come to Stuart. Brian, do you want to speak a wee bit about the finances?
Thank you, Convener. Say that we have an overall framework, and clearly there's a number of moving parts that aren't entirely clear. So we do need a degree of flexibility to work out how best to play our hand as things crystallise. We've talked about the fiscal flexibilities, which is a good example in terms of capital receipts, and subject to the still outstanding clarification of how those fiscal flexibilities will work, the capacity to be able to use capital receipts that initially were perhaps earmarked for other uses, such as the HQ programme, now having the capacity to help plug the extremely challenging gap we face in 21-22 is very helpful. But that doesn't mean the work on the project to which they were previously allocated is compromised. We would substitute that by borrowing. So it's about just finessing things so that on both capital and revenue we optimise our position. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Stuart, do you want to just talk a bit about the operation of the borough buildings, library, etc.?
Yep, thanks, Convener. So the intention is to use the borough buildings for all meetings and appointments with customers. So that will be an area that will be reserved for meetings with customers. That means that we don't need as much space at the library. So what we're thinking for the library is that we're probably looking at a pod arrangements, and then somewhere to have confidential discussions with anybody who is coming into the library in a kind of walk-in basis. So, you know, the reason why, just going back to the original question, the reason why there's not as much work required at the library is that we're going to use the borough buildings more, and that those who use the library is just going to be a walk-in service to get information, which hopefully they'll get at the pod, and if not, then you know there's an area for quite confidential conversations. Hopefully that answers the questions, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Nimmo?
Thanks, Convener. I'll just double checking to make sure I have the right report before I say anything further. Can I just try and confirm what is actually on the ground floor in the library at the moment? Because I'm not aware of what the ground floor is used for. And Douglas, you mentioned the fact that it was going to be minimal costs, but there isn't a figure in the report. Can you maybe put a figure to that? Thanks, Convener.
Figure to just now, Councillor, because it's something we're working on. We're talking that through with the trust as to how these operations are going to take place in the building. All we're advising is that we don't expect it being anything like the order of cost we were looking at previously, which was a major alteration to the building, and as I say, the installation of a lift. The library ground floor, it's used for library services, so there's a range of activities taking place there that involve the trust staff in delivering their service. But as I say, we're looking to co-locate with them on the model that Stuart has just described.
Thanks, Douglas. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, Councillor Kerr, we really are having technical difficulties today, and that I can't actually see anybody. So if people need to shout to say they want to come in, they'll need to do that. But Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Just a couple of quick questions first, Douglas. Douglas, will there be a penalty clause for us leaving Gardner Square? And if there is, how much would it be? And you just mentioned that, brought me to another question regarding the trust. How will that go with, because the trust is in the building at the moment, how will that go with us working in the same building as the trust? Will it just be the same as a normal building? Right, thanks, Douglas.
In relation to penalty clause, there's not a penalty clause as such. There will be a dilapidations cost for us vacating the building, which would be a negotiation we'd have to have with the landlord for the property. So that's subject to discussion once we get the lease negotiations underway. But that would need to be respected when it comes to any final settlement that's made. In relation to the trust, we'll be working, obviously have been working very closely with them on this project as it's progressed, and we would continue to do that in the course of this to make sure there's a proper marrying together of the library services with the advice services as we've suggested in the report and as Stuart has described earlier.
Just supplementary question for that then, if you don't mind, Convener.
Mm-hmm.
What I was trying to get was, I maybe never put it over correctly, what about the costs for the running the place? Will that be a shared thing, or obviously for electricity, for whatever?
Again, that's something that we're working on just now. We'll look to make an arrangement with the trust. I'm sure they'll do us a good deal, and so we're working through that just now at the present time.
Thank you very much. They'll be one of the only few people that gives us good deals in Douglas.
Okay, is there any other member? We're happy to agree the report. Okay, thank you. Just a final item, item 12, and it's obviously the most exciting item that we have on our executive agenda. All joking aside, it is an important strategy that we need to have, and one that we will need to rely on going forward into our budget deliberations. But our Treasury Management Interim Review from Mr. Schnell. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks. I'm sure I'll be able to clear this within the hour. So you have the mid-year position on Treasury. Section 4.1 provides an economic backcloth. The key element there would be hovering around zero, with no sign of that changing much in the foreseeable future. The borrowing strategy is the next section. Inevitably, the slippage in the capital programme previously reported has an impact. If we're not spending on capital, we don't need to borrow. So in effect, that borrowing will be deferred until such time as the slippage catches up. There's part of that section which advises you, as we've done various subsets of the PWLB rates that we can access that are slightly more preferential. Next section turns and flowing from what I've just said, inevitably returns on investment are very, very low, as you know from personal circumstances. The table at 435 is a snapshot of investments at a particular point in time, totaling 48 million. And in fact, there's Appendix 2 gives you a benchmarking perspective of where we sit relative to other authorities, and we're comfortably in the middle where we would expect to be given relative size. We've also been running, as you'd have seen from earlier reports, with cash balances at one point in the year, albeit it's eased somewhat since then, approaching 100 million. And given the restricted high quality range of players that we would invest money, we've found difficulty in actually managing those investments in those terms. So one of the recommendations in today's report is to stretch the ceiling for lending by 2 million for the two categories, one from 7, the other from 8 to 10, and that just gives us a bit more wriggle room in terms of dealing with these balances, albeit they have come down as the year progresses. At 4.4, you've got the potential indicators just to give comfort that the Treasury operation function a potential framework. And finally, if we just jump back to the recommendations, which you can see at section 2. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Brian. I think what it shows is we have a good framework in place for managing our finances, and we're able to adapt, particularly in the current climate where obviously the whole uncertainty around finance is very difficult, but by dealing with the cash balances that we hold in a particular way, it allows us to be able to maximise our use of our flexibilities that we have locally, and to make the most of that. The funding around the capital programme, obviously, we're borrowing means we don't have to pay as much by way of revenue. However, that is partly due to some of the slippage in our capital programme, and that will need to be managed going forward. And particularly where we choose to invest, that will need to be a factor in that as well. But I'm content that we have a robust treasury management system. It appears to be working from the interim review. It's flexible enough to adapt to the difficult climate that we're in, and I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Convener. As we're getting towards the end of things, I'll try and keep this as brief as I can. There is a number of pressures which we're living under at the moment. I think we call it UK PLC has been downgraded a couple of times now by Moody's. I think it says once in here. I think it's actually now been twice. The pandemic is ongoing, and although we can see some green shoots going forward with vaccines, I think there's not actually talking about seeing anything overly positive on that until probably late spring. And of course, we've got a little thing coming up on the 31st of December called Brexit, and whether if we end up with a no-deal situation, my worry there is how that's actually going to affect business, because business has already had quite a hit this year. In saying that, I agree with Leader of Council that if you look at the borrowing and the investment side, where Treasury side works, it is very solid. Where they get their money from is relatively safe, and where they're investing in with the advice of our advisors, they keep that again reasonably safe. The request for the extra 2 million on the parts, and I discussed with Brian about this yesterday, and I thought I'd try and put it into terms that I get, and hopefully it maybe helps everybody else. There's only so many investors that they've got that take a certain amount of money from us, and the problem is there's not enough of them. So rather than trying to go outside the realms of where they are just now, although I know they're still looking at potential more investors, what they're wanting to do is invest more with the current people they invest with, and those are seen as, you're never entirely safe, it's investments after all, but they're seen as reasonably safe places to put it. That to me seems like a common sense approach at this moment in time, and again, trying to keep this short. I'll agree with the Leader of the Council. We seem to have a very robust and a relatively safe way we do both our borrowing and our investments, and I'm happy to second the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'll open up to any questions or comments from members.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet as well, Convener. We applied to the PWLB for the extension of the certainty rate, and at the time of writing, we hadn't received a decision. Have we received one since?
Okay, Ryan.
Working. Yes, I think all the elements agreed. We just need to firm up the actual amounts within each of the category, and that's a fluid situation that will crystallise over time.
The second quick question is, who are our management advisors?
They're Link.
But not Link Housing?
No.
And the chart which shows us about halfway up the league, which is unusual for anybody centred in Falkirk, but nevertheless. When will the big stuff feed in for the council HQ? Will that be 3 years hence, or because we do expect the borrowing to rise, I would think. Maybe pushes even further up the week.
Yeah, I mean, the chart is showing our level of investments, and obviously the borrowing is the other side of the equation. And as borrowing picks up, the level of cash balances tends to reduce. So the sale of the capital will self-evidently be a key driver, as will also the level of capital grant we get from the Scottish Government, because the level of borrowing, leaving aside capital receipts. And we've recognised earlier in the meeting on a couple of items that there's a choice as to how we might use those capital receipts. But typically you've got your expenditure for your project in aggregate, projects in aggregate. You can deduct your capital receipts, you would deduct your capital grant, and then the balancing figure is your borrowing figure. So it depends on the mix of those, what the actual borrowing figure would be. But as a matter of common sense and as a reference point, typically, if your capital spend's increasing, your level of borrowing likely also to be increasing.
Okay, thank you, Convener.
Okay, Councillor Bissett.
Hi, thanks, Convener. I was looking through the report for a sentence that said low-hanging fruit, but I can't find it. I just wanted to ask Brian if, given the climate change problems that we've got and the trend to move away from fossil fuel. Are we pulling investments out of fossil fuel companies and investing more in the renewable companies? And do we have any plans to invest in these companies that have produced these vaccines?
All the low-hanging fruit's been harvested, so we can put that to bed. The question really relates to the pension fund, and this is a live issue for us. In fact, just minutes ago, I saw an email coming in on this issue from the Wall Street Journal, asking for some comments on us as one of the funds that raised a motion at the Barclays Bank AGM in terms of their stance on fossil fuel. So the pension fund is very, very active in this area on a whole range of fronts, lobbying, looking for mandates that are specifically environmentally friendly oriented, and by engagement with the companies that do have a carbon, because it's wider than fossil fuels, a carbon dimension to them. And this is a fundamental part of the strategy. Rather than divesting, which is, we would argue, you're not starving them of investment. All you're doing is passing your shares on to somebody who is much more likely to have less of an interest on environmental impact. So what with ours, and there are big players when you put them together, we're talking trillions of pounds of investment. That gives you real muscle to go to these big multinationals and apply pressure and say, we want to see tangible evidence of transition plans for you moving to a more carbon friendly and indeed neutral position. And there's been a lot of success on that front, but it's an ongoing exercise. But it's a very significant, indeed one may also almost say central part of pension fund investment activity at the moment, and will be in the future. Thanks.
And just on these companies that are producing the vaccine, which are quite prominent, do we look at things like that where they're going to be making billions? I think you're on mute, Brian.
And it keeps jumping off and on of its own validation. I think that was a problem somebody else was having earlier in the meeting. I don't know for sure off the top of my head, but Pfizer is of such a scale, given our range of managers. I'd be astounded if there wasn't some element of shareholding in them. And yes, big bucks to be made by those that successfully get their vaccine onto the market.
Okay, if we are all done, are we happy to accept your report?
Yes.
Agreed. Okay, right. Thank you. We've made it to the end, although we seem to have had some technical issues, and we're working on it, put it that way, just towards the last hour or so. But can I thank everybody for their attendance at the morning, and I wish you well for the rest of the day. But if you're going out, it's absolutely pouring with rain. Okay, thanks very much, folks. Bye just now.